Yeah, it felt like torture. It was so hard to deal with. That's why I was so stressed out and I was desperate. Felt like I can't handle this anymore.
Molly, how did you find Carnivore?
Well, I first heard about carnivore from Dr. Jordan Peterson and Michaela Peterson. I don't remember, they were both around the same time. I don't remember which one happened first. And I kind of dismissed it at the time. I didn't really think much of it. And I thought it was very strange. And then um, several, a couple, well, it was probably 2 or 3 years after that, I my oldest child started dealing with some health problems, more like mental health problems. I didn't really understand what was wrong at the time. And he he struggled a lot and it was very stressful for the whole family. And then um it I had heard about some moms helping their children with ADHD and autism and by changing their diet. But I didn't understand what they were doing. They didn't mention specifically, they just said a diet change. So I kind of just started trying to get our family to eat healthier. And I didn't really understand what I do today, but I um I did what I thought at the time would have been the healthiest and then trying to get him closest to that. And um so in that process of trying to get our family healthier, I started looking up like sourdough bread recipes and I did a lot of research on sourdough and thought that that was going to be a good step in the right direction. So I started looking up a lot of recipes and how to do sourdough properly and um, one night mixed in with a bunch of sourdough recipe results were two videos, one from Dr. Anthony Chafee and one from Dr. Ken Berry, and they were both talking about how the carnivore diet has helped a lot of children with both ADHD and autism. And I was definitely desperate at that time, unlike before when I first heard about carnivore, and very desperate enough to where I just immediately jumped right in. And um, I jumped right in for myself. I kind of experimented with myself for about a month. And then I, as I started seeing the benefits for myself, I started transitioning both of my kids. And uh, it was a lot easier to transition my youngest. She was about 18 months at the time. And my oldest was about 4.5 when we started this. Well, it's really helped so much for both the kids. I saw more drastic improvements with my son's health because he was older, and um, my youngest, my daughter, her health has definitely improved, um, physically and I would say mentally too. Yeah, uh, her doctor was concerned that she was going to be autistic at 18 months old, and um, and she was on the same path developmentally as my son. So I think she was right, both physically and mentally. She's still a little delayed in some areas, like speech delayed. Um, but they've both improved so much with my son talks so much now. And My daughter too. She says a lot more than her brother did at this same age. So she has, and she was um, delayed, definitely delayed in her speech before. She didn't talk hardly at all. Very few, or if she did talk, it only really close family members could understand her. Those few words that she said, it was really just close family members that knew what she was saying. And that's how my son used to be too. And he did know some words, but nothing like full sentences. At 4.5 years old, he didn't speak in full sentences really. He mostly answered yes and no questions, and then used like one, sometimes two words to communicate with what he wanted. And so that's where he was at with his speech. But the one of the main issues we were dealing with he was having terrible sensory problems. He couldn't handle certain things, and there were some sensory issues. He would have a meltdown, and I think one of the worst ones was getting haircuts. He could not handle getting haircuts, and it was terrible to it felt like we were torturing him. He would scream and cry and kick and move his arms crazy, and even his legs, and contort his body, and it was almost impossible. It typically took 4, occasionally 5 people to cut his hair. We had to really um, get a lot of help from close family members, and typically 4 of us could do it, but there were, as he got older and then got a lot stronger, it definitely got harder, and we occasionally had to have a 5th person in there to help hold him down. And we tried different styles to cut his hair, like just regular scissors or the electric trimmers, and a couple other different ways. It didn't matter. He couldn't handle anything touching his hair. He didn't like it being brushed, or trying to comb it to detangle it or anything. He didn't like that either. But for some reason, cutting his hair was the worst. And he also struggled with like clipping his fingernails and toenails. He couldn't handle that either. It's pretty similar with haircutting. We had to hold him down and get multiple people to help us with that. Um, and then also brushing his teeth. His dentist showed me a couple ways to be able to hold him down to brush his teeth. And there were some nights where I was able to do it on my own, um, if he cooperated just enough. But there was sometimes I had to have my husband help too, um, to where we could hold him down together. And even then, it was hard to do a good job because he would bite down on the toothbrush, and or I would occasionally even get bit from doing it because he
And
just didn't like
that
that.
that must be awful because you feel like I've got a job to do. I need to keep his teeth
Yeah.
clean to be healthy, but it feels like I'm torturing him day in, day out.
Yeah, it felt like torture. It was so hard to deal with. That's why I was so stressed out and I was desperate. Felt like I can't handle this anymore. And it was just so hard. Another thing that was very stressful was, and another thing he was dealing with, was emotional like regulation. He couldn't regulate his emotions very well. He got upset very easily, and um I didn't realize at the time how much he was suffering with all this. And I mentioned before that he didn't really speak very much, didn't use complete sentences very often. And at this time, in his transition to carnivore, he was about 2 months into the transition, and he, it's like, so it's strange. There's like something kind of woke up in him. I don't know. He wasn't even fully carnivore yet. At this point, we had only cut out grains and vegetables. That, like, in 2 months, we reduced him down to meat, eggs, dairy. He was having a little bit of barbecue sauce, so he wasn't even sugar-free yet. And he was having a little bit of fruit. And that's where he was at this point. And those sensory issues went away. He let me brush his teeth. I didn't have to hold him down anymore. And um, the next time we did a haircut, we didn't have it wasn't a struggle. And same with the fingernail clippings and everything. He just cooperated, and he didn't struggle anymore. And um, soon after we noticed those benefits, he one day just walked up to me and said, "Mommy, I am so happy." And that's the first like full sentence I'd ever heard him say. And him dealing with those emotional struggles, his emotional regulation problems, and these sensory issues, I didn't realize how much he was struggling and suffering mentally until he said that. And it's so hard to deal with knowing that how bad he was. But he's doing so much better.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really hard when you're just going through day to day, trying to do the right thing. You know, trying to cut his hair, trying to brush his hair, trying to brush his teeth, all that kind of thing. And it's, you're doing your best, and then you realize so was he.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just doing his best, and we didn't realize um like how much this would have helped him, or how much his diet was affecting him. We didn't know. We had no idea. I didn't know what to expect. I heard that this would help with ADHD and autism, and I had no idea how much it would help him, but it sure has. It's helped my daughter too. I mentioned that her doctor was concerned that she was going to be autistic. And she had a doctor's appointment about a week or two before I even heard about those videos from Dr. Anthony Chafee and Ken Berry. So before we started this, she recently had a doctor's appointment, and her doctor was concerned about that. And she also, since she was born, she had been below average height and weight, and she was consistently staying in the 40th and 50th percentile for height and weight. And um she was also dealing with the year before, she was dealing with severe allergies. So she was born in August, and so that next spring she was probably about a little more than 6 months old, between 6 and 9 months old. And that whole spring, she was dealing with terrible allergies. We'd bring her outside, and she could hardly breathe. Within minutes, her eyes swelled up, and her nose and just became clogged, and you could tell she was starting to struggle to breathe. And um, it was just that's what she was dealing with. What were terrible springtime allergies. And I didn't really notice that any other time of the year, but definitely in the spring. Um, so she was severely allergic to something, and we don't know what it was. but we started carnivore early enough in the year to where she didn't deal with those allergies that year. And so that was great. And she was easier to transition. By the time my son got to that point where his sensory issues had gone away, she was fully carnivore. So, but I think that helped her with those springtime allergies, being able to transition her faster because she was younger. Um, that really helped her, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the one of the benefits of them being so young is, they're not really gonna carry that memory of all the sweet stuff that they may have tried and all
Yeah,
that kind of thing, so the transition is so much easier, right?
yeah, yeah. She really the main sweet thing that she liked at the time was applesauce. That was like her favorite sweet treat, and that's what she liked. And I did. It took a little while to transition her off of that, watering it down, giving it to her less and less, making sure she ate as much meat as she could before giving it to her, and things like that. Um, my son was a lot harder to transition. He's still young. He just turned 6 last week. So yeah,
So,
he's,
how is he doing? Like, just generally, like, he's at, I'm not sure exactly how the ages work with school in the States. Is he at elementary school already?
yeah, he would be, I think, considered kindergarten. We're homeschooling, so it's a little different, but he's he's doing very I do not think we would be where we are with his schooling if he was not carnivore. Based on how he was before and um the struggles we were having, I don't think he would have even been capable of he had a hard time focusing, and um he really only focused if he was interested. If he was not interested, he you couldn't get him to do anything. Um and now he's doing addition and subtraction, and he's doing very good learning to read, and it's just been life changing.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And my daughter had a doctor's appointment about 6 months after starting carnivore, and her doctor said she's no longer concerned about her being autistic. Her allergy problems, she didn't deal with those this year either. She didn't deal with them last year because we started early enough, and she didn't deal with them this year either. She has family members on my husband's side who's dealing with terrible allergies. I think that's where she got them from. As my husband's side of the family, because there's his family's still his mom. My husband's mom has terrible allergies, and my husband too. And they my husband had allergies so bad as a kid. I think um, probably as bad or worse as my daughter. He had to get a series of shots as a child. That's what she probably would have had to do, is to get shots just to deal with all this terrible allergies. Because just walking to the car to go to a doctor's appointment, she was her eyes swelled up instantly. It was terrible. You couldn't go outside for even a few minutes. You couldn't have, we had to try to limit opening windows so the pollen or whatever was out there wouldn't get inside, and just keep her inside all spring. It was not fun. And she loves playing outside. So I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. Um,
It's awful. There's nothing, I mean, like, as someone who grew up with allergies, nowhere near as bad as that.
yeah,
It's horrible when part of the year is just completely knocked out because of that.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
And she loves being outside. So that's, I'm sure that'll be a huge benefit for the rest of her life. Not having to worry about springtime every year, and not having to become a hermit every spring will probably be a great help to her. And she also went from the 40th and 50th percentile from height and weight to the 80th and 90th percentile for height and weight. So
That's
her,
fantastic.
yeah, she's doing really good. And her speech has improved like her brother. She says a lot more. She's still not talking like her brother because he's a lot older, but um, here she comes. She might join us. I'm not sure. Um, but she's doing so much better too.
Your son's communication as far as like with kids the same age, how's that? Is that better or?
Better, yeah. He's still, I would say, because he struggled communicating with children his own age before. So he is a little behind. He's still a little behind in that, but he just finished a soccer season. He played soccer this year, and he's communicating great with other kids his age, and maybe not quite as well as the other kids, but it's so much better than it used to be. He didn't like playing with kids his age before. He would play with he typically liked playing with older kids or even just by himself or sometimes younger kids. But for some reason he never really connected well with kids his age. And now he does a lot better with that.
That's awesome. Um, so how is the family eating day to day?
Um the kids are meat, eggs, dairy. They get like they have a little cheese sometimes. Like if my son likes a burger patty with cheese on it, and there's a couple other things he likes cheese on, just to like add to his meat. And she likes cheese too. And then they have 1 cup of milk a day, and that's where they're at right now. And then there's a couple things. um I don't really use like a lot of spices, but we buy some sausage and that has spices mixed in it. So that's really the only spices they get is from the sausage. And then but so that's where they're at right now. I'm hoping maybe later on they'll be more willing to reduce their dairy or even cut it out, because I might even help them a little more. Who knows? Won't know until you try. But um, I think to cut dairy out, I would need their cooperation a little more, because they're both at the point where I would just probably need their help. It was easier to cut out like the barbecue sauce I got my son off of. I started watering it down very slowly, and that's how I got him off of that. And also um, trying different like carnivore recipes, like from Courtney Luna or Chris Cooking Nashville, um, and doing some special recipes like that uh, have been very helpful. Were very helpful in getting him to give up things like fruit and barbecue sauce.
I think like the kind of recipes with in Courtney Luna's book and Chris Cooking Nashville's channel and stuff is for kids, just the fact it's visually different is so important, right?
Yeah, or if it's even similar to what they've recognized before, like with their diet before. If they're like, I recognize this. This looks familiar. Um, that was really helpful. I'm fine with eating plain meat. I eat what I did, so my diet has recently changed just a little bit, but before I was eating about 5 or 6 plain burger patties a day, just with a little salt. And then I would also have between 4 and 8 pieces of bacon, and then around 2 to 4 eggs a day. And depending on how much I had of the other things, it would move back and forth of the um, how much I would have of each. But I would also have a little butter, and I still do that too. But um, that's that's what I was doing. But I've recently had to change just a little bit. I'm still eating meat and basically carnivore, but now I'm more along the lines of what the kids are doing. Because I guess about five, four, no, it's probably 4 weeks ago, we found out we're going to have our third baby. And yeah, so, uh, just from being nauseous all the time, I've had to change a few things. For some reason, it, my stomach doesn't tolerate plain ground beef right now. So I had to stop that. But if I add a little bit of like a little dairy with my meal, um, it's helped a lot to just settle my stomach, because I was trying to continue what I was doing and eat plain meat, because that's what I wanted to do. I just tried to stay with my current meals that was working for me, but I found myself kind of under eating, and I knew that when it lasts long, I couldn't sustain that. And so yeah, I ended up under eating a lot because of just I couldn't tolerate the plain meat as much. But I decided to just give this a I so I took one of the things my kids was eating one day, and because it was actually her meal, and she decided she wanted something else. So I got her something else, and I ate what she was going to eat. And I found that I could eat a lot of that, and I've been doing that a lot more. And I'm no longer I don't it's not like a lot of dairy, but it's definitely adding dairy back in. And it's mostly like cream cheese. One of the things she was going to have is had some cream cheese mixed with a little shredded cheese, and it was like ground beef and sausage and with like cream cheese, and it's a casserole recipe. And it's one of her favorites, but I found I could eat a lot of that. And then there's a couple other things I figured out I could eat too. And I'm no longer under eating. So that's been very helpful. There's been a couple times where my son um, has gone to like family members' houses and snuck bad stuff into his mouth. And he's paid a price for it, and he's learned not to do that. Um, and I made sure every time that he did that, I show him a picture of what he ate, and then when he's dealing with those issues, and it was like the same thing every time. He had he would be fine at first for like a couple hours, and then later that later that afternoon, he would have, in this pretty much same order every time, he would have stomach pain, a terrible headache, and then diarrhea. And so I made sure every time he dealt with that, that he would know that it was from this thing that he ate. And um, so he's starting to learn it. I don't know if he's getting better and asking before he puts something in his mouth. If it's new to him, he'll ask, "Can I have this?" And I'll tell him yes or no, and typically give a reason why or remind him what happened before, and he's doing a lot better understanding.
Oh, that's fantastic. Once you have this baby, after he or she's breastfed, you're
Yep.
gonna transition them to carnivore as well?
Yep. Yep. And hopefully, maybe that'll be easier for them to, I don't know, maybe they won't be liking dairy as much as their siblings. We'll see. I don't know.
I always think it's cute when you see the videos of the carnivore kids sitting in their high chairs, holding the bone and
Oh,
just
yeah.
chewing away at the meat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, that they've had these results, and it's fantastic you've found this so early on,
Yeah.
like,
If
most
if
people
it
are
would
not
have been,
discovering this till teens or something, right?
yeah, I'm so glad we got it. We found it early enough to make a difference, and it's definitely helped.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
helped so much.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Molly, if people wanna reach out to you, is there any way of getting in contact? Do you have any social media?
Um, no. Oh, well, yes, I do. I don't have much social media. I have a Facebook account, and I don't know how many Molly Osbournes are on there, but um, yeah, I have a Facebook account and I have an email address.
Yeah, no worries. I'll link to your Facebook and the email in the show notes.
Okay.
Molly, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.